When was the last time you think Joe Biden actually bought groceries for himself? No, I don't mean in his presidency. I mean ever. Like, when was the last time you think he did it versus someone on staff, somebody who works for him? I think he has no idea, man. I think this whole story about Biden the uniter, Biden the moderate, Biden a good guy, you can trust him, he's just sitting there with the rolled up sleeves, with the construction workers having lunch, chatting them up. All a lie. All a lie. Everything about this guy, this candidacy, was manufactured by the same media that went all in on Fetterman is fine is the media that told you Biden is all those other things. They just don't care. They have no integrity to protect. Their mission isn't to tell you the truth, so it doesn't matter to them. I don't know how a person at this phase, if you believe men can get pregnant, if you announce your pronouns, if you like wearing 3 masks, if you mask up your kids, if you're on your 5th booster and excited to get your 6th booster, if you think Che Guevara's just misunderstood, if you think communism has never really been tried, yeah, I get it. You're voting Democrat, right? So we push all those people aside. That's not changing. But at this stage, Clay, for anybody who is not one of those people, I feel like, and I believe the polls are representing this, it's such an obvious decision, and this is why you've got Biden straight up lying to people. Yes. Here he is on, because he knows the price of gas is really hurting him. Here he is, play clip 9.
Today, the most common price of gas in America is $3.39, down from over $5 when I took office. We need to keep making that progress by having energy companies bring down the cost of a gallon of gas. That reflects the cost they're paying for a barrel of oil.
Clay, this is what we would call a lie.
Right?
The price of gas was $2 a gallon when he took office. I'm glad that it's dropped from doubling while he was in office. It's amazing, isn't it? Just a bald-faced lie.
Do you think, and I think it's so interesting to contemplate, do you think he is intentionally lying, or do you think he's so dementia-ridden at this point, he actually believes that the price of gas was $5 when he came into office?
I think Joe Biden has been getting away with the most blatant and obvious lies his entire political career. I actually think his brand is just lying about things, but then having that ridiculous grin and have the media say, it's just his Irish charm and a little hyperbole. I think Biden is a almost a sociopathic liar. I think he's a compulsive liar.
I think lots of politicians are liars. That was delivered. I mean, it's one thing to lie on something like, hey, our inflation plan is working. Because that's harder to definitively say, okay, like you can have economists sit down and get into a real debate.
Opinions are not lies. Opinions are not lies. Fair.
But when you say, when I came into office, gas was $5 a gallon, and it's super easy to check, and you can tell that this is not the case at all. And he's also saying, we got another cut here, wages are rising more than inflation. I mean, listen to this. That's not true either. That's an objective falsehood. Listen to cut 10.
Today, the GDP results came out, and the economy, in fact, is growing. In fact, the economy grew at 2.6% rate last quarter. And although it may not feel like it for everyone, people's incomes went up last quarter more than inflation went up. And enough growth. So economic growth is up, the price of inflation is down, real incomes are up, and the price of gas is down.
These are all lies. These are all lies, Buck, and they are easily disprovable lies, which is why I say we know that if you put it in the teleprompter, Biden will read it. So did they put that in the teleprompter and they intentionally had him lie, knowing that many people, you can hear people clapping in the background there, many people are not sophisticated enough to recognize it, right? And maybe they think that that's going to have some appeal to some people who are like, well, things aren't good, but maybe Biden's got it on the right track. Or, again, I think the question, and it could be both. It could be that he's an inveterate liar and also that this was and is a further sign of dementia, because it's just such an easily disprovable lie, right? It's not even a remotely opinion-based comment. It's not something that's difficult to track down or comprehend. The price of gas is pretty easy to go back and look up.
Yes. And yet, do you think anybody from the major media outlets is going, where are all the fact checkers?
Oh, yeah,
you remember
they don't
the
do it.
fact checkers
By
play
and
that were
large.
harassing you and me during COVID? Remember the fact checkers like PolitiFact and the other idiot brigades out there at the Washington and the working places like the Washington Post, and they've got their Pinocchios and all this? Biden is a walking Pinocchio. Biden lies all the time. And I remember one of the ways they tried to get people to turn on Trump and say, he lies, and then would say, okay, what's the big Trump lie exactly? And then they would always point to some exaggeration about his, about his awesomeness. Like Trump would say, I'm the greatest, smartest president ever with the most support ever. That's Trump selling people, right? That's a different thing than
braggadocio.
Right, that's braggadocio. That's a different thing than saying what you're looking at right now, the price of gas, is not really the price of gas. That's a different thing than saying men can get pregnant, right? There are lies, and then there are, exaggerations, there's salesmanship, whatever. And yet none of them are going to jump into action here with Biden, because the whole Democrat regime is in a state right now of narrative collapse. You're seeing it everywhere. And I think also the Fetterman phenomenon, which we'll talk more about, what we just saw earlier this week in that debate, people, again, not talking about the blue-haired, nose-ringed, Che Guevara T-shirt wearing, announce my pronouns and shriek at anybody who's conservative when they walk past me people. We can't win them. They're mentally ill. There's nothing to say. Like that's unfortunately 30-40% of the Democrat Party, maybe 30-40% of the country.
The Biden White House is aware that inflation, a nice little transition here, is quite scary to many Americans. And Biden yesterday, Buck, said, hey, inflation, he's acknowledging that inflation's an issue, but he's saying, hey, just buy generic cereal. That'll solve everything. Every time he opens his mouth, things get worse for Democrats. Here's Biden talking about inflation and how people just need to buy generic cereal instead of the name brand cereal.
My message is we're getting them down. I told you I'd bring them down. We're bringing it down. I come from a family where if gas prices went up or food prices went up, what happened? What happened was it was a conversation at the kitchen table. And we're doing a whole lot of other things. And by the way, the food prices, the main driver of food prices is not the price of beef and eggs, et cetera, although they're up. It's packaged goods. Packaged goods. You're going to see people not buying Kellogg's Raisin Bran, which you're going to see them buy another Raisin Bran, which would be $1 cheaper. I mean, so what's happening is there is real movement. We're better positioned than any country in the world, any major country in the world. And our economy is growing, and it's still in a place where it's leveling out in a rational
All right, we
means.
can cut him off here. He's rambling. What you should do is buy generic food. Speaking of Halloween, Buck, I was reading in the Wall Street Journal this week. You know that the cost of candy is up 13% over last year. So if you're going out to stock up to give candy out to trick-or-treaters, you're going to be paying more. Some of these candy prices are up 30 and 40%, which most of us have never seen in our lives from one Halloween to the next Halloween. It's crazy.
Eggs are up substantially.
40%,
Milk is up. And I say
think.
substantially, 30%, 40%. Anyone who goes to the grocery store, I mean, I know you can say this about a lot of politicians, but I do think it's worth noting. When was the last time you think Joe Biden actually bought groceries for himself? No, I don't mean in his presidency. I mean ever. Like, when was the last time you think he did it versus someone on staff, somebody who works for him? I think he has no idea, man. I think this whole story about Biden the uniter, Biden the moderate, Biden a good guy, you can trust him, he's just sitting there with the rolled up sleeves, with the construction workers, having lunch, chatting them up. All a lie. All a lie. Everything about this guy, this candidacy, was manufactured by the same media that went all in on Fetterman is fine is the media that told you Biden is all those other things. They just don't care. They have no integrity to protect. Their mission isn't to tell you the truth, so it doesn't matter to them. And I think the fact of the matter is that Biden's actually making it worse for himself now every time he talks about anything, because It's just not compelling. There's no part of this where I go, ooh, he's got a good point, or oh man, that's going to be a little bit of a tough one for us to explain or to counter or whatever. It's pathetic. They're in full-on free fall right now because, look, they would have been – here's the thing, Clay. They actually probably would have been better off if they didn't have a majority in the Senate.
Yes.
If they didn't have full control of government, they wouldn't be able to or rather, they wouldn't be in this position where when they say, yeah, things aren't good, but, it'll get better. It's like, well, why aren't they good? You guys had full control. You could have done whatever you wanted. I mean, I know people would say, oh, the filibuster. Okay, but on spending, they could have, and they did, and we saw what happened.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue that the Georgia special Senate elections in January of 21 cost us trillions of dollars in national debt. That whatever was spent on those races was a pinprick of what the impact was going to be. Because it is an interesting question, Buck. Let's presume that Georgians elect 2 Republicans in those seats, and we're sitting at 52-48 for the first 2 years of the Biden administration, meaning Republicans are in control of the Senate 52-48. I actually think things would be far better in the country not because Biden's done a better job, but because there would have been a rein on inflation. Again, what I think is so important and everybody needs to understand, inflation is awful. It's at 8.2% or whatever the heck it is, 40-year highs essentially. But if Biden had gotten his $5 trillion in additional spending, we might well, Buck, be sitting at 14 or 15%. It's not only that Biden was awful as president in his first 2 years. It's that if he had gotten everything that he wanted, which he was close to getting without Manchin and Sinema standing up to him, things would have been infinitely worse than they are right now. And I think there's a panic setting in 11 days out. Buck, I don't think it's crazy to think that Republicans are going to have their biggest majority in the House in 100 years. And increasingly, I think 53-47 is in play. And that becomes substantial because, remember, our good friend Joe Manchin's going to be up for re-election in 24. He's done. He's either going to have to become a Republican or he's going to have to step down. He's not winning re-election. Buck, my mom just texted me. Did you know that there is potentially going to be a turkey shortage in many parts of the country for Thanksgiving? My mom, so you can go out. I know a lot of people cook turkeys in different ways. Cracker Barrel, which is a popular restaurant around here, they will provide you a full meal. They are telling people in the Nashville area, if you want to get us to do a turkey for you, you better order now because we don't think we're going to have enough turkeys. We can't get enough turkeys to be able to satisfy the demand here.
But Bill Gates and the globalist
It might be
order,
enough bugs.
They are going to come out with amazing recipes where if you just take crickets and cockroaches and you mash them up into a paste, I'm sure there's a mold you can make of a turkey, and it's far more sustainable and less damaging to climate change. So who needs an actual turkey on Thanksgiving when you can have ground up crickets in the mold of a turkey and you can maybe pour some, some gravy on that? There you go.
I mean, that's where we're headed right now. And I wanted to hit you because some people were reacting to my comment about the cost of Halloween candy being up 13%, which is pretty wild to think about. Some of the individual costs for these Halloween candies are truly through the roof and unbelievable. They're going up 35 and 40% right now for individual brands, which is really kind of crazy to think about in a year-to-year basis that could be occurring, Buck. I mean, would you have ever believed that Halloween candy would be going up 40% from one year to another? I've never seen anything like this in any of our lives that we could have ever reached this position.
Why is it that you can look at a chart and see that Trump is in office for 4 years, and even when we see what happened in 2020 with the pandemic shutdowns then, which was certainly not helpful to the inflation problem, but it didn't start to just skyrocket on the graph until Joe Biden comes into office and immediately announces new regulations, the shutdown of the Keystone XL pipeline, sends huge signals to the energy sector, and spends $2 trillion completely unnecessarily for the American Rescue Plan. Well, what is the counter argument to this? All you have to do is look at a graph. You look at the numbers. This is a scoreboard election, my friends.
Yes.
Look at the scoreboard on inflation. Look at the scoreboard when you talk about the border and how it's wide open, the numbers on crime. They can't get around the data because the data so clearly shows their failures.
And that's why I think they've tried such distractions like January 6th. That's why they've tried Donald Trump. That's why they've tried to focus on abortion. Because even COVID, Buck, I think they tried the trial balloon of, hey, Joe Biden finally beat COVID. And so many of the Democrat base are committed to wearing masks forever and don't believe that COVID is over, that he had to walk that back too. It's rare you could be president for 2 years, and every single thing you touched got worse. And so the only possibility you have is random crazy. I mean, I'm genuinely fascinated to hear what the spin will be at MSNBC and CNN if we get this Republican wave like the data is reflecting that we are likely to get. What are they going to say on November 8th as these election results come in? What are they going to say on November 9th when it's clear that America has overwhelmingly rejected their argument of American democracy is in peril and repudiated the Democrat Party and put Republicans in an even stronger position than maybe they've been in 100 years in the House, Buck? What is that response going to be? I can't wait to see it, but I don't know that there's a good one.
I mean, we are going to enter. I think that no matter what, you just know that 2023 is going to be a fascinating year in American politics, my friends.
Oh,
it's going to be really interesting. The dynamics among Democrats and among Republicans for what comes next, because this has been building for quite some time. I think this red wave that we've been seeing, because in a lot of ways it actually stretches back to the end of the Trump presidency and the BLM riots and the COVID lockdowns and all these things that Democrats pushed even under a Trump presidency. And this really feels like the first time when we have results to look at, the American people get to have a referendum on Fauciism, on the BLM, progressive prosecutor phenomenon, all of those things. That it wasn't like Biden came into office and it just started then. A lot of that really was the last 6 months of the Trump presidency that Democrats used that period of mass hysteria and really the frenzy in this country, particularly around COVID, but also around George Floyd and BLM, to push these things. And so now we finally get to say this was all disastrous.
COVID made Joe Biden an accidental president, and I think Americans are increasingly becoming aware of that, which is why the repudiation of him is going to be so severe in 11 days.